LinkedIn is pretty great at a lot of things, like helping you tap into the latest trends and insights in your field. We cannot stop your coworker from tapping her pencil. LinkedIn can help you find new jobs that align with your career goals. We cannot help you find the source of that weird smell in the office fridge. Ew. And while we can't stop your coworkers from bringing their hobbies into the office, LinkedIn can help you bring your career to the next level. LinkedIn is the network that works for you.
What's going on, y'all? It's your host, Will, coming back for a new episode of the HuntStand podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be bringing on good friend, Mr. Terron Bauer. Now, Terron brings a wealth of knowledge from how to cultivate a piece of property into growing some giant whitetail year after year. Not only does he do that, he also kills these giant whitetail. So, we're going to get Terron on here to pick his brain on what he does, how he does it, talk about timber stand improvements, early successional growth, and even more. So again, y'all, we just want to thank y'all for tuning into the HuntStand podcast. We really appreciate y'all's support. If you haven't yet, download the HuntStand app, and we hope you enjoyed this episode of the HuntStand podcast. Are you ready to get this thing rolling?
I am. Let's get it done.
Okay.
Let's talk whitetails.
Well, let's talk it, man. I mean, we're gonna run through it. If we go down some rabbit holes, that's cool. We'll go down them, and we'll just pick your brain on everything whitetail. That sound good?
You bet.
All right, man.
You bet. Let's do it.
Well, Terron, man, first and foremost, thank you for coming on to the HuntStand podcast. Can't appreciate you enough for taking the time out of your day today to talk nothing better than whitetail with me.
Yep.
One of the things I like to do to get every podcast started is I like for you, the guest, to give the listeners kind of that 30-foot tree stand view of who you are. You know, so kind of tell me where you live, how you got into hunting, and kind of how you've gotten to where you are today.
Yeah, you bet. So I grew up in Oak, Nebraska, kind of south central Nebraska, right on the Little Blue River. Was just involved in the outdoors kind of since day one. My dad and some of his buddies started out with just a camper, and then they built a cabin. Mm-hmm. They were just rifle hunters. It was just kind of the week of rifle season. And that was something I looked forward to every year. It was so awesome having all the guys in camp. And we were kind of the only one with, like a hunting cabin right in that area. So people from 15, 20 miles away, they'd bring bucks in. And I remember, getting held up over the tailgate just to look at the bucks. And that kind of started it off for me, I guess. And I wanted to hunt more, so I started out bow hunting right away, and I've been bow hunting for about, this will be like year 23, I think.
Heck yeah.
So I've bow hunted for a lot of years. My wife, when she got with me in college, I got her started bow hunting a little bit, and now our 7-year-old son, he's bow hunted a little bit. He shot 2 turkeys and a 130-inch whitetail last year.
Wow.
At age 7 in Kansas with a crossbow. So it's kind of just a way of life now. But yeah, we live, like I said, right on the Kansas border. So I've got a family farm in Nebraska. Mm-hmm. My parents own some land up there. So I hunt that. I acquired a lease that borders us this last year. It kind of ties everything in together, and it's helping save some bucks too, really. It got rifle hunted pretty hard in the past. So, but, having my dad with the farming background and stuff, I've started doing food plots, 10, 15 years ago, and basically have, planted anything, that's known to whitetails. I've tried it and kind of developed my food plot systems over the year of what I plant and, what I don't plant anymore. But yeah, so that's kind of the background. So
I love it, man. I mean, I love that you got your family involved. You got your wife doing it. Now your son's doing it. So, I mean,
yep.
That's
Yeah, well, she'll say she's not doing it anymore because somebody has to stay home and watch the kids, which is exactly right. So she's not getting to do it as much now, but hopefully again here soon.
yeah. Well, that's what I'm hoping I can do. I've got almost a 2-year-old at home right now,
Yeah.
and every time I say you want to go hunting, she gets ecstatic when she sees the deer here in the office behind me. She's sitting there pointing at it, going buck. So that's good for Dad, right?
Yep.
That's good for me to hear that. So
yeah, without a doubt.
now, what do you do for a full-time job?
So actually, my wife and I, we have a photography business here in town.
Okay.
We have a studio right next to the house here. We're really busy with that, and then I do a little bit of work with Whitetail Habitat Solutions too,
Yeah.
with their with the kind of sponsor relations with them too. So yeah, that and watching the kids and pictures almost every day. It's keeps me busy, but yet I get enough time to get out and do the food plots and the management and that type of stuff too.
Yeah.
So
Man, I love it. Now, a good friend of yours who made the connection for us, Jace Bowserman, he let me know that you're kind of referred to as the Whitetail Yoda, if you will.
he does call me that. I think it's only because every time he shows up here, something dies, and he just thinks it's like automatic. Which for some reason, when he rolls into camp, stuff dies. But no, he's turkey hunted with me for probably like 7 or 8 years now. I think he's deer hunted for 4 or 5 years, and he's kind of seen the progression of the farms and stuff, and kind of how they've changed over the years with food plots and hinge cuts and that type of stuff. It was probably 4 or 5 years ago. We were turkey hunting, and I think he'd filled both of his tags. And the next day I was like, well, we're going to go do some whitetail stuff. And he was all about it because he was just kind of, getting into whitetails a little bit. And we got onto a farm that he hunts now. And I told him, I was like, yeah, see that little hump over there, that ridge? I said, there's going to be a bed on there. And we walk over there, and it was full of deer hair. And he was like, no way you just did that. No way. That was crazy. So, we've talked whitetails, and I've kind of helped him strategize some stuff out in Colorado. And like I said, he's killed 4 bucks here. I think he killed his biggest buck he's ever killed 4 years ago. And then the year after, the wind was real screwy one morning for us. And so I told him, I said, let's just go hop in my bank's blind. We'll seal up all the windows, keep it scent tight. And sure enough, the biggest buck I had on the farm that year, a buck I called Triple Brow, showed up, and he shot him at like 12 yards. He was 160-inch mainframe 4x4. And so he went ahead and killed that buck too, but that was cool. It was just an amazing time seeing him kill that and how excited he was. So
I imagine, man.
It was cool.
Heck yeah.
It was cool.
Well, what I want to focus this podcast on with the Whitetail Yoda is not necessarily growing giant whitetail in the Midwest, but cultivating and managing and just creating a suitable habitat, if you will, for these whitetail. And it seems like that's your bread and butter, man. Food plots.
Yep, that's what I love to do.
Yeah, food plots, hinge cutting on bedding areas, early succession growth, moon phase. I want to talk all that with you. And so kind of give us an introduction on what goes through your mind and how you approach one of your properties when you have big bucks in mind.
Okay. All right. So basically, when I'm starting to set up a property, the first thing I'm looking at is access. Access to me is, the number one important thing. You've got to be able to move around on that property without bumping deer. The next thing is going to be food, developing food plots. So many people I see, they'll be like, oh, I've got an open spot over here. There's no trees. I'll just put a food plot in it because it's easy.
Yeah.
And, they're like, man, once I've started putting food plots in and things like that, my deer hunting hasn't necessarily gotten any better. It's maybe gotten worse. And a lot of that, I think, is, they didn't design out where their food plots should be in relation to access and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're actually inviting more deer to their property, but then what they're doing is they're bumping more deer, so they're not holding as many deer. So basically, I'm looking at access, food plots, and then bedding type stuff. And then, like, as far as the food plots go, I used to plant. There was a lot of clovers, alfalfa, and stuff like that, and I've
Yeah.
kind of strayed away from that now to where all of my food plot acres are more focused on fall type plots.
Okay.
So I'm starting with a base of corn, and corn has seemed to be better for me, better than beans, I guess I should say,
Mm-hmm.
as the grain. If it's legal in your state and you can knock corn down, it's tremendous the entire season. But like in Nebraska, we can't knock our corn down because it's technically placing bait. But you'll still get good usage of it throughout the entire year. And I was finding with soybeans, they were hitting them through the summer, which is great, but we're not necessarily hunting deer during the summer.
Yeah.
So I'm not all that worried about summer food. So I've switched over to corn, and then I will do some brassicas here in the next couple of weeks. I was just talking to my cousin Trevor this morning about getting the brassica plot put in here in the next 2 weeks or so.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with just strictly radishes in that plot, and then around the edges of the corn, I'll go with a wheat, rye, triticale, and maybe some oats in that. And like I said, that's all geared towards, what's most attractive during the hunting season.
Now, when you talk about knocking corn down, y'all aren't cutting it. You're just basically like, what does that mean? Like, you're talking to a Texas boy here.
Yeah. So a lot of guys will just go in with a shredder,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll just shred the corn. And I've talked to like our local game warden, and Nebraska's baiting laws they're kind of screwy. There's kind of gray areas in them, but our game warden says you can't knock corn over, so I can't knock corn over. You might talk to another game warden, and he says, yeah, go ahead. But like I said, my game warden says, no, you can't do it, so I don't do it. But like I said, it's still good. But if you can knock the corn down, it just seems like it's crazy. And you'll notice that, being up here in the Midwest, the first cornfield to get harvested every year
mm-hmm.
is an absolute magnet. I had a buddy probably 10 or 15 years ago killed a real nice buck over the first cut cornfield that year. And like I said, it's just a magnet. So
you can hunt after a field's been cut and harvested, right?
Yep.
But you can't.
Yep.
Okay, I get what you're saying. So if you just basically go through and shred it, you can't hunt it. But if it's harvested and cut, you can.
Yeah, exactly. They say that if it's for food plot, it's not a normal farming practice to shred it.
Okay.
So it's technically placing bait. I know there are guys that have found some ways around it.
Yeah.
You can run a combine through it and basically blow it all out the back end of the combine if you want. But like I said, it's just some of our laws that we have to do. But in states where you can do it, early September, October, November, December, all those months, if you have knocked down corn, it's a magnet, especially with like our combines today up here.
Mm-hmm.
They're not leaving much waste grain at all. So, you might have a 100-acre cornfield, next to a 2-acre cornfield, and, that farm field has very little corn in it. And you have a field where you leave it stand, and it's full of kernels and full of corn.
Yeah.
They're just going to hammer it.
Okay.
So
you kind of talked about fall. I mean, are you putting in, you talked about corn as kind of your go-to. Is there a wintertime, late season crop that you're putting in, or food plot, if you will?
Yeah, so that'll be the corn, but it'll also be that wheat, rye, triticale.
Mm-hmm.
Oats a lot of times will die out after a couple frost. Um, but I've noticed, if you do have kind of a warmer December, say even 30, 40, 50s, that temperature range right in there, the deer will hit that green. So basically, I'm planting corn. Like I call it my destination plot, where I'm wanting all the deer to focus on,
Mm-hmm.
in the evenings. So, so I'll start out with radishes there, and then behind the radishes, I'll have about an acre to an acre and a half of that wheat, rye, triticale mix, and then corn on the back side of that. So basically, any type of weather, if we'd end up getting snow later on and bitter cold temps, they're going to hit that corn. But if it warms up a little bit, they're going to hit those radishes. They're going to hit that green.
Ah, okay, okay. Man, this is all food plots is new to me because being in Texas,
Yeah.
it's not a real
Yep.
it's not a real big thing. I mean, you'll have some of the bigger ranches and places around here that
Mm-hmm.
they'll put some food plots in place, like primarily just oats. And I think
Yep.
you'll have like a
Yep.
couple of other like biologic fields.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love talking about this because it's new to me, and I'm getting to come up to Nebraska actually in a few weeks, the very beginning
Oh,
of
awesome.
September to hunt. So I'm excited about that.
Good deal. Good
So
deal. Yep. And I tried that too when for years, our season opened September 15th, and I always tried to shoot for that first week of September to plant those greens.
yeah,
And once they moved season up to September 1st, I was like, man, I've got to plant my stuff, like the 15th of August or the 10th of August.
hmm
And I found out real fast at the very first year that if you plant that stuff that early, it'll get too tall and it'll just get rank and the deer won't hit it. So it's real important up here to watch those frost dates and basically plant according to your frost dates, like 60 days before and stuff like that with the brassicas. So I
okay.
I just have to kind of just grit my teeth and do it. I hate to do it because I'm usually doing it the first weekend of deer season, but I figured out that later on in the season, you're way better off if you can plant it that first week of September.
I like it. I like it. So I feel like food plots it's a pretty wide concept topic.
Uh-huh.
I want to move on to hinge cutting bedding areas. Kind of
Yep.
tell us what exactly is that and why you're doing it and what does it benefit.
Yeah. So the hinge cutting, I've been around for about 10 years, 11 years. And it was crazy because the first year that I did it, prior to that, I was hunting and I'd see, maybe 20, 30% of the deer that I had on camera.
Yeah.
And then the first year that I hinge cut and kind of designed where the bedding area should be according to, food plots and access and that type of stuff, I basically was seeing every deer that I had on camera, every buck that I had on camera, I should say. Um,
Really?
so I kind of fell in love with hinge cutting at that point. 10 years now, 10 years later, I maybe don't like it as much as I should. When I go to buddies' properties and stuff like that, it's not for every property for sure. But like for mine on the river with hunting, I basically have like 80 acres on the river,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm trying to hold as many deer as I can. Um, I love hinge cutting. And then this last year, a buddy and I, we did basically some clear cutting where we went in and cut every junk tree. And so like back to, like talking about designing a property and stuff. So basically on the river, it's not, I don't have blocks of timber like they do in, Iowa and Illinois and Kentucky and places like that. I just
Yeah.
have basically a river corridor. So the widest timber that I have is probably about 175 to 200 yards wide,
Wow.
and then all the way down to, like in my funnels are 25 yards wide from the field edge to the river edge. So, and obviously those are the areas that I'm focusing on, with all of my stand sites.
Mm-hmm.
So basically where the timber gets thicker or wider, I'm going in and making hinge cuts. And, basically a hinge cut is, you're cutting 3/4 of the way through the tree, tipping the tree over. You're getting cover there, and deer love just a bed up against that cover.
Yeah.
And it's also splitting those doe family groups up. I've kind of noticed that you can stack more deer into like a block of timber
Mm-hmm.
when you separate them. And I don't know if it's just, one mature doe doesn't like looking at another mature doe, or, what exactly it is. But since I've done that, I've put way more deer on the property. And so back to, like I was saying, designing the property.
Yeah.
So basically I'm doing the food plots, and then right behind that is going to be the doe bedding. Does are usually always going to bed closest to the food source, and then behind that is going to be your bucks.
Okay.
And a lot of people will see that on food plots, or say that, they'll be like, well, the doe showed up first, and, the buck showed up last right before dark. And I think, one of the biggest reasons why that is because does are bedded right there next to the food, and the bucks are bedded, beyond them. So, when you don't have a block of timber, it's important to get those does out, as close as you can to the food, so you're able to get some bucks to bed in there. And like I was saying, I'm trying to put does, in the first 75 to 100 yards, and then I'm going in and doing less hinge cuts back behind for the bucks. And then obviously on the sides of there, because it's like my property, you could kind of say it's kind of almost like an hourglass.
Okay.
To where it's thick bedding, it'll neck down and then get bigger again, and then neck down, and everywhere where it's thicker like that, that's where I'm trying to stack all of my does, and I'm trying to keep them away from those funnels, and then just hunting them coming through the funnels, or during the rut, I'm trying to hunt the bucks in the funnels, going from doe bedding area to doe bedding area. And then what I've done now too is put travel corridors that connect each one of those bedding areas. And so basically what we did is went in there with a skid steer, put a 6 foot wide pass through there, and that connects every doe bedding area. And my camera locations will be in those funnels at the tree stands, and it's worked out really well.
Wow.
Worked out really, really well.
Dang, you got me excited.
So,
got me wanting to come up there, man.
You bet. Nope, it's fun. It's a fun process for sure.
I like it.
That is for sure. But, and like when I first started, and you've maybe read magazines, articles and stuff about, hinge cutting and buck beds, and it used to be like, yep, I'm going out, I'm going to go out today and make some buck beds. And it's not really necessarily making buck beds or doe beds, but you're kind of doing it to where, like I said, to where everything lays out, according to the food, because the does are going to bed for food and the bucks are going to bed for security. And that's just, no matter where you're at, it seems to be, that's the case.
All right, y'all, we're going to interrupt this podcast real quick for a quick word from our sponsors. The HuntStand podcast is brought to you by Bowtech Archery. Refuse to follow. If you're in the market for a new bow this fall, make sure you check out Bowtech and the easy tuning capabilities of the Deadlock system. I've been shooting the SR350 this year, and tuning that thing has been so easy. Don't have to worry about twisting strings or doing any of that razz and jazz. So if that's what you're looking for, make sure you check out Bowtech Archery today. Up next, we got Lacrosse boots and their Navigator series. The world is raw, rugged, and relentless. Navigate it accordingly. The Navigator series is born to take your hunt further. Check out the comfortable and versatile line of lace-up hunting boots from Lacrosse today. Up next, we got Federal Premium. Go beyond what you ever thought possible with their lineup of Terminal Ascent ammunition. I've been using this ammo this year so far, and it has worked phenomenally for me. From Predators all the way up to a beautiful Hill Country, Texas Axis buck. It worked amazingly. One shot, that buck didn't go anywhere, about 250 yards. That buck dropped right in his tracks. Literally didn't have to do any tracking. So if you're in the market for some new ammunition, check out Federal Premium and their lineup of Terminal Ascent. Up next, we got Browning, the best there is. I'll be using their new lineup of Ovix gear this fall, so I'm really excited to check that out and just get to use it this fall all the way from the Whitetail Woods up into the mountains chasing elk. And finally, we got WorkSharp, the knife sharpening company. I use their MK2 knife sharpener on every knife in my house, in the kitchen, in my pack. It makes sharpening your knives a breeze. My wife even loves to use this thing. It makes everything super easy. So if that's what you're looking for, make sure you check out WorkSharp today. All right, y'all, we're going to get back to this episode of the HuntStand podcast. Now, in regard to relation to these directional relation to your food, where have you, I mean, obviously it's going to be property-based, terrain-based, but, would you say that there has been a common denominator in deer movement, east, west, north, south? Would you say like there's, because I know I'm thinking in terms of relations to like elk hunting, you think, and you hear guys say all the time, oh, go to the northeast slope, shaded side of the mountain. That's what you're looking for. Is there anything like that you would cue the listener in on whenever they're trying to design that property themselves?
Not necessarily on movement wise, a little bit on bedding. And I've got one buddy that I argue with all the time about cedar trees, because we have a ton of cedar trees, and everybody loves cedars up here. And I've just started to find out that you can't have that much shade. Deer wanting sun, and we're kind of running into that problem where guys aren't managing their cedar trees. If you can manage your cedars and just have, say, blocks of 3 or 4 or 5 or 10, mixed throughout CRP or even just in clusters, it's fantastic to where they can bed on the side of them. But where you're getting, crazy thick cedars, deer just aren't using them like people think they do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of topography based stuff. And like I was saying with Jace, when we were on that turkey hunt, doing some scouting, I walked him into that hump, and if you get some topography stuff like that, you'll have bucks bed on that. Or otherwise, something else I've noticed a lot is where a river or a creek bends. A lot of times you'll see a bed out there, and I think majority of the time it's a buck, and it's a pretty good buck, to where they can bed and they can look up and down the river both ways, and then they'll use the wind to their favor too. So they can see anything coming and then smell anything from the other way, and if they have to, they'll bail right off that riverbank, to the other side of the river, or creek, or whatever it is. But
okay. So the next thing I kind of want to dive into is, you talked about early succession growth. Tell listeners, what is that and how you're using it?
Okay. So basically on that, where I started with in Nebraska on our farm, I started out with a lot of cool season grasses, brome, stuff like that. That's just, it's basically useless for wildlife. It'll hold some fawns a little bit in the summer when it's standing, but once we get a frost, once we get some wind, some colder temperatures like that, it lays down. And we had an entire pasture that had been pastured with sheep for years, and it was all smooth brome. And so I've been going in there and killing sections of that brome out of there and establishing early successional growth with sunflowers, pigweed, mare's tail, water hemp. I've got one spot that's solid marijuana this year. Absolute a marijuana mess. And but it's good structure. I mean, it's holding a lot of deer right now, and it's giving those deer browse.
Wait a minute.
With the water hemp.
Did you say marijuana?
I did say marijuana. It's like,
I like how you just kind of like I got marijuana, and then you just kept talking like, whoa, wait a minute, whoa.
Yep.
Hold on.
Got marijuana. And
fill me in a little bit here. Like what? How?
We have have marijuana all over the place up here, and obviously it's not your good stuff.
Right.
Otherwise I'd be a really, really rich man and wouldn't be doing this type of
So you
stuff.
probably be podcasting with me right now.
If it was the good stuff, yeah, I'd be selling it. But
explain the difference.
I honestly don't know the difference.
Okay.
But we have marijuana, and it gets 8 foot tall, and like I said, it's good bedding, it's good structure. But yeah, yep. So that's a little bit on that rabbit hole you were talking about going down.
Yeah, this is a rabbit hole right now. So like I know, like
I should have never even mentioned marijuana.
No, I mean I want to dive in this because I know the listeners like me are probably like, whoa, wait, he said, wait, what? Like,
yeah.
Okay, so
and the next time I'm down there, I'll take a picture and send it to you.
So is it just? I mean, you just like go to the ag. I mean, what?
No, it's just it's just in the seed bank. So like when you kill that brome, that brome has a bunch of toxins in the roots. So it basically chokes everything out. So when I went in there and started killing that, everything that's in that seed bank from the last 100 years is starting to come up, and that's one of the things.
So somebody just went out there and planted marijuana, or
I have no idea where it came from, but it's everywhere.
So what are you doing? A game
warden?
The
ditches, and everybody up here is used to it. It's just that's where a lot of our guys shoot their turtle doves at, because our turtle doves are in it like crazy. And I don't know if that's why they fly so fast and so crazy, but that's where our turtle doves are at.
So it's perfectly legal though.
Yep. It's just an invasive weed up here.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not going to have a Nebraska Wildlife Department agent call me back. Hey, who's that guy you were talking to on the HuntStand podcast? And he's growing marijuana?
Nope. It's just part of it. It's part of it. But
okay.
If it comes up next year, I'm going to start weeding it out because the deer don't browse on it at all. But like I said, it is good structure, and it's providing some bedding. In that early successional growth, we'll kind of curb the gap, the nutrition gap, because a lot of your weeds, like your water hemp, your pigweed, all that type of stuff, I'm not going to say the M word anymore. But yeah, that stuff is full of nutrition, and the deer browse on it like crazy.
Okay.
So, basically when we're going in from our winter months into our spring, before like our soybeans are planted and stuff like that, the deer are really focused on basically those types of weeds. And, we're starting antler growth like 2 to 3 months before any of our crop fields are really up, and they can benefit from those crop fields. So to me, it's really important to have those weedy areas, just for not only for food, but for bedding cover. And I use mineral up here. It's legal to use mineral here. But I'm not really sold on mineral helping with the size of antlers.
Yeah.
And that's kind of against what a lot of people will say, but I just don't think you can get a wild deer to eat enough mineral. Like right now, my biggest buck has shown up on mineral 3 times, I think, this year. And I've got a camera, I'm rolling cameras right now on all of my mineral sites. So you just don't, I feel like if you don't have, those weeds and that type of stuff that's full of nutrition, you're hurting yourself with antler development just a little bit. And a lot of it has to do with rain and stuff too. We were real dry this spring starting out, and I'm seeing that kind of hurt the antler development a little bit.
Yeah.
So, if you can start off the winter, which we had a really mild winter. So I was like, man, this is going to be fantastic for antler growth. But we started out with kind of a drought, and our plants weren't necessarily super healthy. So deer weren't necessarily getting all the nutrition that they could have been getting. So we did get some rains, and stuff's really taken off. The marijuana's growing like crazy. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so I'm huge on that. Shrubs, that type of stuff, woody browse for later on in the season. It's just so important to get, the stuff that that doesn't do your deer any good. Like I was saying, those cool season grasses and transferring them into warm season grasses. I've got the pasture half split up right now. Half of it's really weedy, and then the other half is your tall native grasses. Right now, the deer are preferring more of the weedy areas, and I need to be a little bit better about turning that native grass into a little bit more of kind of a weedy mess.
Okay.
Just so there's food in with that bedding.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of in experiment stage right now too, where, if the native grass ends up being better during the fall for bedding than than that early successional growth, I'll try to transfer that over to it, because, obviously my main focus is on holding deer during the fall, not necessarily right now. But it's in the Midwest, it's so tough to, try to keep, have it just all a fall property, and just because you have fence lines and, field edges and stuff like that, where deer are going to prefer during the summer, where they can kind of get a breeze and stuff like that. But I try to keep all my timber super, super thick with the hinge cuts and stuff like that, to where they're going to want to be there during the fall.
Okay. Man, there's so many rabbit holes with this. It's insane. So
You bet.
The next thing I want to go over, you had talked about this before we hopped on the podcast, and you had spoken on moon phase.
Uh-huh.
How are you utilizing moon phases in your properties?
Okay, so my thinking is a little bit different than kind of your university studies and stuff like that.
Okay.
They'll tell you'll see, which there might be some people shake their head at this, but I've just seen it for too many years now with cell cameras, and I can watch it closer with the cell cameras.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing it happen more and more, and believing in it more and more. But you'll see a lot of, a university study will say no correlation between deer movement and the moon. And every time I read that, I'm just like, man, that is just not the case right here. And you might, you'll maybe disagree with what you see in Texas, but I love the full moon.
Really?
Yep. I will have all of my really, really good trail camera pictures will be on the full moon, in and around that full moon. The dark period of the moon, I do not like.
Explain.
My best hunts will be around that full moon. So I watch a lot of the moon rising times, and every month when we have the full moon, say 4 to 5 days ahead of that full moon, afternoon movement will be terrific. It'll be the best of the month. If it's warm, obviously the weather's going to trump it just a little bit.
Yeah.
But if we can couple it with a cold front, you best get in a tree stand, because deer movement's going to be good. And now that deer movement's going to get just a little bit later every day as that moon rises a little bit later, until the night of the full moon. The deer movement here is usually right at dark. Mm-hmm. But say 5 days before that, I need to be in my stand. If the moon's going to rise at 3:00, I'm getting in my stand at 2:00 or 2:15. Each day, that movement is going to get a little bit later until it hits that full moon time. And then on the backside of that full moon, mornings, when the moon's high in the sky in the mornings, then I'll switch over to mornings. And that is 100%. I've watched it for the last 10 to 12 years, and it's like clockwork. And I have a bunch of buddies that'll text me and be like, hey, when's that, when should I hunt this? And like I said, it goes against a lot of what people say. Mm-hmm. But and I don't have experience with like Pennsylvania guys, even Texas guys, and I don't know why it would be different, but I feel like there are so many studies and stuff like that that it's possible that it's maybe just a Midwest thing. I don't know, but I just know for myself, I'm hunting those full moons, and that's when I'm seeing my best deer movement.
Man, I will have to say that I do not disagree with you, because now that I'm thinking on it, all my trail cameras, it makes sense, because like right before a full moon, it's like the afternoon activity is insane. And then after that
Yep.
full moon, the morning activity is the same. And so, I mean, yeah,
Yep.
it just,
Yep. And it doesn't matter time of year either. It is, if you're going to summer scout, that full moon, that's when I'll take my drives, if the family wants to go out, look for deer, something like that. I'll be like, hey, we should go out next Friday night or next Saturday night. It'll be good. But I have found that to be true. Like I said, for the last 10 or 12 years.
what about when it's those dark moons though? Like, what are you seeing the deer doing then?
I'll get a little bit of midday movement, say 12 to 2-ish during then. And a lot of people will tell you, you're going to see that on the full moons because they're up moving all night. And that, like I said, that's not been the case for me personally. And even if I've got, say like I don't hunt a lot in September and October, I kind of leave the properties just kind of soaking in until the rut really kicks in. But, if I've got a buck hitting a food plot or something like that, say, 20 minutes after dark, something like that, maybe even an hour or two after dark, if we have a good cold front that couples with that rising moon, I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to take a chance on him, and I'm going to go hunt that buck. Even if he hasn't daylighted, because there's a good chance that's going to be one of the first times where he daylights.
Okay.
And this year the full moon's setting up really, really good. It's November 8th this year. So I love, my favorite time on my dad's farm is the 8th through the 12th. So I'm tickled about that. And that full moon's going to kind of end right as rifle season comes in too. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but I'm not a huge rifle season man. So I'm kind of excited that that's going to be towards the dark part of the moon. I would almost bet that I kill my buck this year between the 6th and the 12th, just on that full moon.
I'm gonna text you between that time.
All right.
To find out
I'll
if
be sending a picture.
I want that picture, man.
Yep. You bet.
Man, this is all really good advice for those guys that are trying to figure out how to set up properties. I mean, obviously, it's people are thinking about that now if they haven't already for the past couple of months. So I know we're running out of time, but before we go here, kind of give any last-minute advice you would have when a guy's looking at his property, trying to figure out what to do, considering all these things that you've talked about today.
Yep. Like I said at the beginning, just kind of remember your access and make sure you're not bumping deer. So, if you're going to go and design a bedding area, make sure you're not designing it somewhere where you're going to be having to drive past all the time to go check a camera or something like that. And then another thing real quick, kind of that I do, and you kind of have to, it just kind of depends on the state too, but like I try with a rifle season during the rut, I try to hold more does than, say somebody in Iowa maybe should, where they don't have to worry about rifle season during the rut. I want as many does as I basically can keep healthy with, with food plots and stuff like that on my property to hold those does. So I'm basically trying to hold as many bucks as I can, during that lockdown time, so they're not over on neighbors' properties, because it's so easy for me to lose so many bucks during the rut.
Yeah.
In the last few years, it's been a little bit better. I've saved more bucks than I have in years past, and a lot of that I think has to do with, places where those bucks can go and take does into that thicker cover and lock down with them, and then having those bigger doe groups like that. A lot of times when he gets done breeding one, there's another one in that family group that's coming in. So he's, right on lockdown onto her. So if I can keep him locked down for, say 4 or 5, 6 days of that 9-day rifle season, I'm sitting way better off. But yeah, I mean, as far as, setting up, you just got to remember, try to focus your habitat more on the fall type habitat, your thicker habitat, food plots, stuff like that. I know a lot of guys get wrapped up with clovers and alfalfa and stuff like that. And that's, like I said, it's good. But if you can, provide weeds and stuff like that, that have that same nutritional value, do that. That's going to provide some bedding too. And lean that focus a little bit more on those fall type plots.
Man, I love it. Tell the listeners real quick, where are you on social media? Can they find you on social media? Anything you've done before?
I am. Just Terron Bauer on Facebook, and then it's just tb.hunter on Instagram, and you bet.
Man, I love it. Terron, man, I really appreciate you hopping on the HuntStand podcast.
Yep.
Talking about all this. I know we're definitely have to get you back on here, because we'll have to talk more stuff on cultivating your property. So I love it, man. So thank you again.
Whenever, it'd be fun.
All right, y'all, there you go. An end to another episode. We just want to thank Terron for hopping on, bringing a bunch of knowledge to us, and hopefully y'all will be able to take something from this podcast, apply it to your property, do some things to cultivate some giants so you can start killing some giants yourself. And again, y'all, we just want to thank you for tuning into the HuntStand podcast, and we'll see you on the next one.